Divisions exposed. The fatal shooting at a Taiwanese church in California prompts calls for action against hate speech in Taiwan. More COVID disruptions. As infections soar across Taiwan, schools are set to go back to online classes. Seeking investment. Tech and trade top the agenda for a Polish delegation visiting Taiwan. Climate catastrophe warnings. The latest world report on climate change paints a gloomy outlook, but it's not too late to take action. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Religious and political leaders in Taiwan are calling for more action against hate speech following a deadly shooting at a Taiwanese church group in the United States. Survivors of Sunday's attack in California joined an online prayer session on Wednesday night. The attacker is believed to have been politically motivated, and as Rick Lowett reports, the incident is exposing long-standing divisions in Taiwan.
Church leaders, activists and politicians in Taiwan bow their heads in a moment of silence to honour the victims of an apparent hate crime thousands of kilometres away in California. The violence has shaken Taiwanese communities at home and abroad.
我们也借着这个事件来呼吁政府正视台湾某些统派团体所散播的仇恨言论。台湾有许多的美，有许多的好，但是我们极力的反对有这种传播仇恨的言论发生在我们的生活当中。
On Tuesday, a California court charged 68-year-old Taiwanese American David Zhou with first-degree murder and 9 other charges. State prosecutors are seeking the death penalty after he allegedly opened fire on members of Irvine Taiwanese Presbyterian Church, killing 1 and injuring 5. Authorities say he expressed hatred of Taiwanese, and Zhou has been linked to China-backed groups helping Beijing in its goal to take over Taiwan. In Taiwan's capital, religious and political leaders urged the government to face up to hate speech from groups which push China's claims. The Chinese Communist Party considers Taiwan as part of its own territory, despite never having ruled it.
可是我觉得作为一个法治的国家，在法律面上更完善，对于相关的仇恨的罪行 或者仇恨的言论，能够采取吓阻的作用，也是必要的一个作为。所以，作为立法委员，我们会结合我们很多的执政党甚至反对党的立委，一起来完善我们的法治面，让这样的仇恨罪行不要在台湾出现。
Taiwan society is divided. Younger generations increasingly identify as Taiwanese rather than as Chinese.
I mean, as complicated as it could be, it's actually a simple divide that's about how people in Taiwan would imagine their relationship with Taiwan should be. Whether it should be that Taiwan should be part of China, and at the same time, you are likely to hold a Chinese identity. So that you think yourself as Chinese. So you want Taiwan to be part of China. On the other hand, a majority of people in Taiwan do believe they're Taiwanese. They're not part of China.
Reports suggest Zhou's family has roots in the people who fled from China to Taiwan during the Chinese Civil War in the middle of the last century. These people are more likely to see Taiwan and China as one nation. Zhou reportedly sent a US-based Taiwanese newspaper a 7-volume journal titled Diary of an Independence-Destroying Angel, which is now in the hands of the police. The Orange County Sheriff's Department said Zhou fostered a grievance against the Taiwanese community and was upset about the political tensions between China and Taiwan. On Wednesday evening, the Taiwan Presbyterian Church in California held a joint online prayer service. And from a pastor who was at the church on Sunday, details of how the community subdued the killer.
驚到，家己也小可轉跋落去，我甲工地轉規個拍落去塗骹，槍轉落佇塗骹，離伊個正手，嘛佇我個正手，一絲久離後真驚伊個會去扣穿起來，所以我甲伊個頭甲伊個手骨摘掉咧，緊化講趕緊什麼人來到我甲伊刺掉咧，阮三兄弟就馬上活過來甲伊刺掉咧。
The Taiwan Presbyterian Church in California is coming to terms with the hate inflicted upon its community. But the act of violence has also forced Taiwan's leaders to re-examine the threats facing a divided nation. Alex Chen, Bing Wang and Rick Glowert for TaiwanPlus.
TaiwanPlus reporter Bing Wang spoke to Amy Liao, whose parents were at the Taiwanese Church luncheon when the shooting took place. She says her mother is still processing what happened that Sunday.
Her memory is a little bit blurry, but she does recall the gunman shooting up into the air first, and that caught people's attention. People were scrambling. Her main memory was seeing Dr. John Chang, Dr. Zeng, as she refers to him, running towards him, getting shot, hitting the ground, and bleeding a lot. She started to feel queasy and lightheaded. They were pretty close to the gunman, and so her hearing went damp, kind of like if you go to a loud concert or something. And she just kept seeing that image of Dr. Chang on the ground, feeling the panic in the room, and just trying to see where they could exit. But as the reports have come out, you know, most of the exits were blocked. So, you know, I think everything happened pretty fast.
How are your parents feeling in the aftermath of all of this?
She told me, you know, once she was able to cry and grieve, like let herself grieve that moment, she was able to get fuller night's rest. So I think, yeah, just the time, and as they continue to process, things will calm down a little bit more. I think my dad, he views like the experience of, wow, like God saved my life again. Yeah, he's not as much of a verbal processor. The church has contracted a couple psychiatrists or psychologists, mental health workers, to come for the next couple weeks to share with the congregation as a whole.
Have you talked with other members of the church and how they are feeling right now?
The church is supporting each other and sharing their experiences, trying to piece together what happened. You know, how did everything unfold? Who was this guy? Comparing details from what's coming up in the news, and then everyone comparing details of their experience interacting with the gunman, since, you know, he was there at the luncheon. So yeah, my other auntie said she actually went up to him and asked him, why are you closing all the doors and putting chains on the doors? And then he, according to this auntie, he responded in Mandarin, like, so that nobody can get out of here. And I think people aren't expecting an active shooter situation, but, you know, just feeling like there was something definitely off.
Schools in many parts of Taiwan are going back to distance learning due to a surge of COVID cases. More than 90,000 new cases were recorded on Thursday, and officials say the wave won't peak for another week. John Van Trieste has this report.
Online classes are back for many Taiwanese students. In the north of the island, where the biggest COVID infection numbers are being recorded, Taipei is recommending schools avoid in-person classes next week.
既然实务上你知道我们请防疫假的学生就已经2万人了，所以干脆这样，下个礼拜开始你知道国小、国中、高中你知道我们就在实施远距教学。当然是这样的有需要到学校来就来，授权每个学校自己决定。
But third-year junior high and high school students, those getting ready to move on to the next level of schooling, will stay home from next Monday until the day before they graduate. Neighboring New Taipei City is taking a similarly flexible approach.
新北市从一开始到现在就采取高风险跟低风险的判断，所以在这个过程当中，他们 都用授权跟弹性的方式来面对跟家长做好充分的讨论跟沟通。
And in the south, where cases are rising, the port city of Kaohsiung is moving all classes online for part of next week.
那针对短期疫情上升的部分，我们决定从学校跟幼儿园的部分是从礼拜一到礼拜三，我们全面采行居家远距教学。
Authorities in Kaohsiung are also considering taking things a step further, which could mean keeping elementary and junior high classes online until the summer break in July. James Rayner and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Lawmakers from 33 countries are calling for Taiwan's return to the World Health Assembly, the decision-making body for the World Health Organization. Over 1,500 lawmakers signed a letter to the head of the WHO calling for Taiwan to be reinstated as an observer at the World Health Assembly's annual meetings. The list includes members of the European Parliament, as well as legislative bodies in 32 European countries and Canada. The United States and the group of 7 leading industrialized nations, the G7, have also voiced their support for Taiwan's return to the World Health Assembly. This year's summit is scheduled to run from May 22nd to 28th. Taiwan has not been invited to observe the Assembly's annual meeting since 2017 due to objections from China. Poland's Deputy Economics Minister Grzegorz Piechowiak is in Taiwan with a group of business leaders. He's welcoming Taiwanese companies to invest in his country. The call came at a trade forum earlier this week in Taipei. In particular, they are seeking Taiwanese investment in semiconductors, electronics and other advanced technologies. The official says that despite the war in neighbouring Ukraine, Poland continues to offer a secure business environment for investors. For more on the Polish delegation's visit, TaiwanPlus reporter Louise Watt spoke to Marcin Jezewski, an analyst for the Taipei office of the European Values Centre for Security Policy, a Czech think tank. She started by asking him about the significance of the visit.
I believe that the timing of this visit is quite important. In the past few weeks, we have seen a growing convergence of interests, both in terms of normative alignment, but also pragmatic action between Taiwan and Poland. Taiwan has collaborated quite closely with various Polish authorities to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid for Ukrainian refugees affected by the Russian invasion, and the bulk of this aid went to Poland and directly benefited Polish stakeholders who are working on relief efforts. So this delegation adds another dimension to Taiwan-Poland cooperation, the strengthening of the economic pillar of bilateral ties between the two countries.
And Taiwan-Poland relations have strengthened in recent years. What are the reasons for that?
I believe that the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic was an important catalyst for the betterment of the ties, as Taiwan demonstrated its generosity quite early on in the pandemic. That was then reciprocated through donation of vaccines to Taiwan. So that has definitely established a strong foundation for expansion of ties. Beyond COVID-19 diplomacy, during the pandemic, we have also seen the deepening of ties in other areas. For example, it was during the pandemic that for the first time, direct flights started operating between Taiwan and Poland. So far, these are charter connections, but this definitely sends a strong message about the potential of expanding those transportation links in the future. I believe that it is important to remember that among other Central and Eastern European countries, Poland is a sort of outlier in the sense that the authorities in Warsaw are pursuing what I call a strategy of dual engagement, as they simultaneously try to deepen ties with Taipei and with Beijing. So while we have seen that Poland-Taiwan ties have followed an upward trajectory, it is important to remember that obstacles still remain, and they stem mainly from the desire of political elites in Warsaw to maintain good ties with Beijing as well.
Taiwan's legislature is considering tougher penalties for people who engage in economic espionage. They are mulling amendments to the National Security Act and an act that governs exchanges with China. In particular, they target people who work with foreign entities to steal core technologies from Taiwan. The changes would increase fines to $3.3 million and bump up prison terms to 12 years. Opposition lawmakers raised few objections to the amendments during consultations on Wednesday, but they did say there was a need to guard against not only Chinese-made military goods, but also counterfeits produced in China. The draft amendments will face a third reading in the legislature on Friday and are expected to be passed into law. One of Taiwan's biggest annual religious processions is set to kick off in the early hours of Friday morning. Despite an outbreak of COVID, more than 90,000 people have signed up to take part in this year's Baishatun Mazu pilgrimage, one of several massive processions in Taiwan that honor the sea goddess Mazu. As a precaution, all participants must be fully vaccinated with 3 jabs. Organisers are expecting 6,000 vehicles will join in the procession this year, stretching 40 to 50 kilometres long. That's 3 times larger than last year. They will travel 200 kilometres from the northern county of Miaoli to Yin County in central Taiwan before returning several days later. Earlier this week, organisers installed the vanguard flag on the dragon pillar at the temple where the procession will begin. That's to ward off evil spirits and remind devotees to begin fasting in preparation. Coming up, the gloves are off. Taiwan's Lin Yuting gears up for her final fight for the Women's World Boxing Championship title. Details after the break.
We're just leaving the harbor. We're going to start putting in the ghost money. This is an offering to the ghost gods to make sure that we have a safe trip. We're now about 30 nautical miles off the coast of Taiwan. The waves are still pretty big. I'm not the most happy fisherman right now.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A Russian soldier has pleaded guilty in Ukraine's first trial for war crimes committed during the Russian invasion. Sergeant Vadim Shishimarin faces life in prison for shooting an unarmed civilian in the early days of the invasion. The 21-year-old tank commander admitted shooting a 62-year-old man in the northeastern Sumy region. According to prosecutors, Shishimarin was ordered to kill the civilian and used an AK-47 assault rifle. Shishimarin told the courtroom, including the victim's widow, that he accepted his guilt totally. Ukraine has so far identified more than 10,000 possible war crimes committed by Russia, including attacks on hospitals and massacres in Russian-occupied districts. US President Joe Biden is set to begin his first visit to Asia since taking office last year. Biden's trip to South Korea and Japan begins Friday. He will meet with US and South Korean troops, but has no plan to go to the demilitarized zone that separates North and South Korea. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says there are concerns that North Korea will use the visit as an opportunity to conduct its first nuclear test since 2017.
With respect to the issue of North Korea, we've said from this podium, we've said at the State Department, and we've indicated in quite clear terms that our intelligence does reflect the genuine possibility that there will be either a further missile test, including long-range missile test, or a nuclear test, or frankly both, in the days leading into, on, or after the president's trip to the region. We are preparing for all contingencies, including the possibility that such a provocation would occur while we are in Korea or in Japan.
Our climate is changing before our eyes. That's according to the World Meteorological Organization, that's warning of disastrous consequences if immediate changes are not made. The United Nations agency, which covers weather, climate and water resources, released its annual overview in its State of the Climate 2021 report. Eric Gao has the details.
Climate change is still worsening. The latest UN report finds that the world has not done well in fighting global warming over the past year.
The State of the Climate report is a dismal litany of humanity's failure to tackle climate disruption. Sea level rise, ocean heat, greenhouse gas concentrations, and ocean acidification set alarming new records in 2021.
The World Meteorological Organization report says emissions of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide were historically high. Both sea levels and ocean temperatures continue to climb, threatening sensitive ocean ecosystems like coral reefs. The effects of climate change are being felt around the world, with millions of people being displaced by weather events and economic losses in the hundreds of billions of dollars. But it's not too late to turn things around.
The good news is that the lifeline is right in front of us. Transforming energy systems is low-hanging fruit. Renewable energy technologies such as wind and solar are readily available and in most cases cheaper than coal and other fossil fuels. Over the past decade, the cost of wind energy has declined by more than half. The cost of solar energy and batteries has plummeted 85%. And investment in renewables creates jobs, 3 times more jobs than fossil fuels. We don't have a moment to lose.
Taiwan is stepping up its efforts to fight climate change. The government in March announced a new plan to have renewable energy provide up to 70% of the country's electricity needs by 2050. It also aims to achieve net zero emissions in that same time frame. But there are concerns that the changes countries are pledging may be too little, too late. The UN has warned that without immediate action, the world is heading towards a climate catastrophe. Damon Lin and Eric Gao for TaiwanPlus.
Like other countries around the world, Taiwan is feeling the effects of climate change. We saw a rare snowfall at the start of the month, while temperatures in the first half of May have been the 3rd coldest since record keeping began. To learn more about the unusual weather, Eric Gao spoke with Xu Huangxiong, a research fellow at the nation's top research body, Academia Sinica.
Actually, generally speaking, the Taiwan will get warmer and warmer, just like a global mean temperature. But near some occasion, we can have some cold winters. So that means that even in the global warming trend, the cold winter or cold days could still occur.
Meanwhile, over in India, there's a heat wave going on with record-setting temperatures over there. Where else in Asia is seeing extreme weather being brought on by this global warming?
Yeah, I guess the biggest signal of global warming is the temperature. So as you can notice that now is the dry season in India before the onset of summer monsoon. Okay, but nowadays, when there's no rain, then the temperature becomes higher and higher. That's why they get a record-breaking high temperature in recent days. Okay, another trend is when we are in a warmer climate, then the atmosphere contains much more moistures. So when the rainfall be produced, it tends to be larger compared to the previous years. So now we are observing more and more occurrence of record-breaking rainfall in Asia and actually globally.
Here in Taiwan, do you feel that Taiwan is doing enough to fight climate change? And in your opinion, where should our efforts be focused?
So try to enhance or develop our availability of the green energy, such as wind power and solar power. And we also need to explore other new, more inventive way or new ways of producing a green or alternative energy.
Taiwanese boxer Lin Yuting has advanced to the featherweight final of the IBA Women's World Boxing Championships in Istanbul. Former world champion Lin is in contention for the gold after beating Kazakhstan's Karina Ibragimova by unanimous decision in the semi-finals. She will face Irma Testa of Italy in the decider on Thursday. A nude man and two figures behind. One of Michelangelo's early drawings has gone under the hammer in Paris for over $24 million.
I think what is exceptional about the drawing is that we see on the market a work by one of the greatest artists in Western art history. Very few drawings and very few works by his hand remain in private hands.
The 15th century sketch in pen and brown ink is the artist's first known nude. It was drawn by Michelangelo in his 20s. The piece was auctioned at a record price for the Italian master's drawing. Last sold in 1907, the sketch recently resurfaced in a private collection when a Christie's specialist recognized it as the artist's work. It had previously been deemed a French national treasure, meaning it could not be exported from the country for 30 months. That designation has been removed, allowing its sale internationally. Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Finally, today we leave you with images of a flypast by the French Air Force at the Cannes Film Festival. It's dedicated to Tom Cruise's achievements in cinema. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.